Go Habs go! Hey everybody, I'm Rick. With a huge win Tuesday night versus the Ottawa Senators, the Montreal Canadiens took possession of the second wild card from the New York Rangers and are currently one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team, in the NHL since the Four Nations break, with an 8-1-2 record and 73 points in 67 games for the season. They have a precarious hold on the WC2 with 15 games remaining and 4 teams yapping at their heels. The thinking is that it'll take 93 points to get the wild card 2. Montreal has 73 points currently, so they would need to find 20 points in the remaining 15 games. That's a minimum of a 9-4-2 record. Can Montreal win 9 of their last 15 games? I think they can, and I think they can get to 2 overtimes as well, because I think there are 11 winnable games remaining in the season. I'll break it down for you in this way. I'm recording this Thursday morning. The Habs are in New York to take on the Islanders. After the trade of Brock Nelson, I think it's a surprise to most people that the Islanders are back in the race, but I do believe that it's mostly because the teams that were ahead of them haven't been playing as well, and I think that's the reason. The Islanders, they don't have very good special teams, and I don't think you can get into the playoffs with special teams that are at the bottom, literally at the bottom of the league. I think the Habs roll in there. It's a win for them. It's going to be a tight game, really close, may go to overtime, but Habs walk away with the W. 2 days later, Montreal back at home to face Colorado Avalanche. Even with the loss of Rantanen, I think they improved their team, especially down the middle. It's a powerhouse top 6. Depending maybe on which goalie we get, I think this is a tough game for Montreal. I think they can stay with Colorado, get it to overtime, but I still think it's a loss. But they'll pull a point out of this game. Montreal then goes on the road for 4 games, and the first one is in St. Louis. St. Louis is on the verge of a playoff spot, a wild card spot, but so they're fighting for it just as much as Montreal. Who's going to get it? I believe Montreal will have a win here. I haven't really been following St. Louis, but it's who wants it more. I got to believe Montreal does, and it's a win here in St. Louis. 2 nights later, Habs find themselves in Philadelphia. The Flyers are in a rebuild. They traded away Frost and Farabee a little earlier. Lawton at the deadline. They down the middle there. They got nobody. I think Montreal rolls in there. It's the first of 2 games remaining against the Flyers. I personally think they're going to win both, and they're going to get the W here. Goaltending there is, depending on the night, abysmal or actually really good. Montreal wins here. The very next night, they're in Carolina. That's going to be a tough one. Back-to-back, so the second game of a back-to-back against a really solid team that they do struggle against. So I kind of see this as a loss, actually more than kinda. The thing here is, can they take them to overtime? I think they can. I'm not 100% confident, but I'm going to call this a loss in overtime. They pull a point from Carolina. They end the season with Carolina, so we'll get to that later, but I think it's a loss here. But in overtime for a point. They end the month against Florida, and they end the road trip there, but then it's a it's a home and home thing, so they'll be back in Montreal on the first, also against Florida. Now, the first game in Florida, I'm kind of 50-50 on this. We played really well against Florida all season. I kind of think Florida's going to be wanting almost desperately to win this game. And since it is at home for them, I see this as a loss, potentially going to overtime, and potentially Montreal could win here. I'm hoping they will sweep them, but I'm going to give this one a loss and a 50-50. Now, for the second game back home in Montreal, I think it's a different story. Montreal being, desperate to make the playoffs, which is really what they are, and playing well against Florida so far this season, I think they win here. I think it's one of those games you look at and go, "Wow, they can't beat Florida here," and then they do. So I'm going to give them a win. I'm just going to leave it at that. 2 nights later, Boston rolls into town, and this is a game I'm looking forward to. Boston clearly in a retool after trading away Marchand and Carlo and I think others, but two big guys to move from the team, so clearly they're retooling. I think this is a game where Montreal can knock them completely out of any hope for the playoffs. I'm relishing that, and I think it's a win here. And I'm going to go as far as saying it's not going to be a tight game either. Montreal's going to win here handily. Yeah. Go Habs, go. Is Montreal building a winning streak at the right time of the year? 2 nights later, Philadelphia is in Montreal. It's the game I was saying we have another game against them. Philadelphia clearly wanting to finish as low as they can to get a great draft pick at the upcoming draft. And I kind of think here is another, I'm going to say an easy win for Montreal. I don't think this is going to be a close game. And maybe not another one of those, like, I think we beat them 7-1 last year or something. I think it's another one of those kind of games. Montreal rolling and starting a winning streak with a win. 2 nights later, Montreal is in Nashville, taking on, a horrible Nashville team. Surprisingly so this year, gotta say. And you don't want Montreal to sort of look beyond Nashville, because this is a game that sort of worries me. They go in there kind of building a winning streak, and Nashville looks like, they're going to win this game. So I wouldn't take them very lightly at all. I don't think Montreal will, and I do think they win this game. But I'm going to say I think this is going to be a closer game than you might think. But it's going to be a W, and Montreal keeps rolling on their winning streak. All right, 2 nights later, they're back home. Detroit's in town. I think at this point, Detroit's fallen out of the race, and they're not, they're not in the race. I do think they're going to want to spoil it for Montreal, so I think this will be probably a pretty close game. But Montreal prevails and gets the W. All right, so 2 days rest, and they travel to Ottawa to take on the Senators, who at that point may be a little bit better off. Like they might have the third spot in the division. Maybe they've fallen out. I don't really know for Ottawa. But I think this is where that 5-game, at this point that I have it, winning streak comes to an end. Ottawa's going to want revenge for the last game where we beat them 6-3. And I don't want to say embarrass them, but I want to think that. So I think it comes to an end here. It's a loss. But at this point, I think Montreal can afford a loss. I'm hoping, although I do think it's still going to be tight. I don't know that they're going to have control of that wild card spot yet. But it's going to be a loss in my mind. Next night, they are in Toronto, and now even though it's the second game of a back-to-back games, I am looking forward to this game. I'm hoping Toronto is kind of still struggling, because Toronto right now, if they have a bit of a losing streak, can fall into a wild card spot and not even be like in a guaranteed spot there. I'm looking forward to this game. Montreal will be playing well, coming off of a loss, I think, to Ottawa the night before. This year they've been fine on the second game of back-to-backs, and I think they're going to be fine here and going to surprise Toronto, show Toronto what they might be facing possibly in the playoffs if they meet Montreal and they pull a win out of Toronto, because go Habs go, they do. Well, we're down to the last 2 games of the season. So 2 nights after the Toronto game, Chicago is in town. Yes, Montreal finishes the season at home. Chicago's going to want to be spoilers here, especially, of course not, especially if Montreal is, either needs the game to get in, stay in the playoffs or whatever the situation is. But, can they be spoilers? Are they good enough? I don't think so, and I'm not going to say an easy win because you know what? It probably isn't going to be an easy win. It's probably going to be a close call, but Montreal wins. And the last one. 2 nights later, Carolina. So that's that second game. I said we play them again. It's the last of the season. I think, on this night, even though we generally do struggle against them, although it was a great game earlier in the year, they're probably going to be resting some guys. And if Montreal needs to win this game, they're not going to be resting anybody. So I think that we're going to win this game. Maybe it's not easy, but I think we're going to win this game based on the fact that they will be resting guys, in my opinion. And there you go. The last W that they need. If they get all of these, like I say here, I don't think it's in doubt that they're going to make the playoffs. But it's the question of, can they win all these? I don't think they win the 11 that I've got W's for, but I think they win 9 of them anyway and do get to overtime in enough to get enough points and make the playoffs. And yeah, my prediction, Habs make the playoffs. I said this on New Year's Eve, that if they beat the Vegas Golden Knights, which they did, that they're going to make the playoffs. And right now, with 15 games remaining, it looking like that. We got a bit of a ways to go. Let me know what you think in the comments section about all these games, and give a thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Go Habs, go! Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.